Welcome back to the Krell Laboratories podcast. My guest today is Dave Gray, the chief cat herder at Raiders of the Podcast. I'll put a link to that in the doobly doo. Today we're going to be talking about Godzilla Minus One and Godzilla more generally. So you went to see Godzilla with a young person, did you not?
Oh, I did. Yes, I took my niece. She's 8, and she's seen most of the original series, like more than most adults I know. But you ever watch somebody else have like that moment where they're just so in awe of something on the screen? I spent more time watching her than the movie the first time.
That's awesome.
Just like she was not next to me anymore. And I wasn't sure, like, she read the subtitles, no problem. I was a little worried about that. And I had to explain what kamikaze was, which is a question, but
That's a discussion. That's not really a common discussion to have. How old is your niece?
8.
8.
Yeah. So that was one I was not expecting, but it's like, they flew planes. Don't worry about it. I've gotten very good at dodging questions.
That's. So did you see it in IMAX or did you see it just regular?
I just saw it in the regular theater the first time. I try to go more towards the indie theaters in the area.
Sure.
So they don't really have IMAX. They have like other branded large format that I don't want to talk about it. It's not good.
Right. Yeah. I mean the lone indie theater we have is mostly devoted to art theater.
Yeah.
Although lately they've been showing things that have been showing up at the local multiplexes too. Like they had Poor Things for like 4 weeks, and then as soon as they ended Poor Things, the big theater picked it up, which was very annoying.
Yeah. My indie theater, like, they mean well, but they're terrible about communication. So like I won't find out they're showing something until the day of.
Oh God.
So I've missed so many things. I was lucky to catch Godzilla there. I could drive, because otherwise I got to drive like an hour.
Oof.
Because I'm not allowed in the local Regal. So.
Oh, that's fair. They are kind of godly, aren't they?
Well, yeah, we had an incident in ours that's just not worth talking about at the moment.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Yeah, we saw it at our at actually our local Regal theater, unfortunately. Mainly because I've got like one of their unlimited passes, so I just show them a barcode and walk in, and no money changes hands, which was nice.
I'd love to have one of those.
I mean, it cost me $19 a month. Yeah. I see enough movies that is worth my time. Somebody only sees like maybe 2 movies a year, probably isn't worth it for them.
Yeah.
But yeah, we saw it at the preview showing like 2 days before it opened.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and we were in one of those RPX theaters that has like the rumble seats and shit. So and the screen was just huge. It wasn't an IMAX, but it was a big screen. And I like to sit in like the second or third row from the screen because I like to have movies sort of like dominate my sphere of perception. And this is like the first Godzilla movie I've had the chance to really appreciate that, because of the way that it's filmed. I mean, you get the scale of Godzilla in a way that you don't really get in other Godzilla movies, for that matter.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I totally. The way they handle Godzilla in this one is it's easily one of my favorites. No question. And
he's only on screen for like 9 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, everything else is just brilliantly done to emphasize those 9 minutes. So, when did you first see Godzilla? How old were you?
Oh, I was probably about my niece's age, maybe a little younger. Local TV, we had an independent station in DC that showed Godzilla every weekend, and my great grandmother was obsessed with kaiju. So maybe 5 the first time I saw Godzilla, and it's just been there. Godzilla's just been a staple. Wasn't so lucky to see most of them in the theater until recently, but I've been making amends every time I can.
Well, a lot of them never really made it into American theaters, especially during like the Heisei period, the '90s movies. I mean, those you had to bootleg them a lot of the time. I don't think Godzilla versus Biollante has ever been on some kind of video format in North America. I mean, if it
No.
was, it was during the early DVD era, and it was probably only on disc for about a minute and a half.
Which, well, that was a good thing about the early DVD era. There was some weird stuff.
Yeah, but I first saw Godzilla. God, I don't remember. It was a long time ago. I will say this: Godzilla is probably responsible for my adult politics. Because in 1974, my dad, who was in the Air Force, was stationed at Tinker Air Force Base in Oklahoma City. So we were watching it, and the TV station in Oklahoma City had Godzilla or some other monster movie on every afternoon after school, and I was in the first grade. And at some point in 1974, all of the Godzilla movies and all of the other monster movies got preempted by the Watergate hearings. And I was just livid. Who the hell is this Richard Nixon guy, and why is he preempting my goddamn Godzilla movies?
I mean, to be fair, if something's going to push you to being a leftist, that's a pretty good one. I mean, you know, my story's not that good. That's a good one. I mean, yay.
So, yeah, and I vividly also remember there being like a special primetime showing on TV of Godzilla versus Megalon, I think, which I think came out about that time. I don't remember seeing Godzilla versus the Smog Monster during that period, but I might have. But be that as it may, Godzilla Minus One is probably the best Godzilla movie of my lifetime, and I'm being a coward that way, by the way.
Well, it makes a strong argument, although I loved it. I'm a little torn. It kind of made me lose faith in other people. I looked on Reddit and I saw people arguing why it had a happy ending, because apparently it shouldn't have. And it's like, how do you miss the point that hard?
I know, right? Well, I mean, it's the grimdark fallacy. I mean, there's this fallacy, and I blame. This is the second podcast in a row where I blame Frank Miller and Alan Moore for this. Where, you know, something that is despairing and bleak and horrible is thought to be more realistic than something that is hopeful and happy, which is bullshit.
But Godzilla has 9 minutes and he represents national, like, they cannot be more explicit.
Yeah.
You know, here's national trauma due to war. Why would crashing anyway? I read that last night and I was just like, okay, I give up. I don't care anymore. We can burn now.
American viewers are really cynical.
Jesus.
You know, when we left the theater, my partner asked me, you know, are all Japanese movies that emotional? And I'm like, yeah, for the most part. Mm-hmm. And she says, wow, the American movies would never do something like that. And I'm like, well, not anymore.
No, there's a time. There's a time.
But yeah, so let's talk about some of the specifics. Mm-hmm. One of the things that really struck me about this version of Godzilla is the way that it reworks other elements that have been on screen before. And the one that stands out to me is the way that it reworks the origin of Godzilla as presented in Godzilla versus King Ghidorah from the 90s. Because you have sort of a similar setup. You have a Japanese platoon, in this case airplane mechanics, on an island, and this dinosaur monster wanders ashore. And in Godzilla versus King Ghidorah, apparently the rules at that time were that Godzilla is Japanese first and a monster second. kind of like a Chinese hopping vampires. Chinese hopping vampires are Chinese first and then vampire second. They'll chow down on colonial English people before they chow down on the locals. But in Godzilla versus King Ghidorah, Proto Godzilla, the T-Rex sort of monster, helps this garrison fight off an American battleship, and it saves the lives of all the men. And one of the men becomes like the CEO of a company that is charged with defending the country against Godzilla later in the film. But be that as it may, this film has a sort of similar setup, but it omits all of the bullshit.
Yeah.
It just presents this sort of primal horror encounter.
Mm-hmm. It's a great introduction.
And it does sort of omit the Americans altogether.
I do like how they used the beginning of the Cold War, though. They handled that pretty well, like really well. I didn't expect that to even be an issue, because generally they gloss over that stuff.
Yeah.
So that was a really nice touch.
I mean, I was really, I mean, the stuff that happens immediately after the war, after Shikishima goes back to Tokyo, that stuff floored me, because that's the sort of thing that I would never have seen never have expected to see in a Godzilla movie. I mean, it was sort of the sort of thing that you would see in a Kinoshita movie, or a Narusa movie, or one of the Japanese art directors from the 40s and 50s. But you wouldn't see that in a Godzilla movie. Although the first Godzilla movie is sort of in that tradition.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's an incredible look when he rides up home and you just see the devastation in the shanty towns.
Yeah.
I mean, the production design on that is just it's incredible. And again, it's coming from watching a lot of American films. You don't see stuff like that here very often with that level of, like, I think the only movie that had that kind of detail in it last year from the US that I saw with wide release was Barbie. I mean, nothing really got that intricate with the world they built. And I mean, and they did it for nothing.
Well, we should talk about that, because that movie was in the news for costing $15 million to make. Mm-hmm. And the director of the film said no, actually it was more like $10 million. Mm-hmm. And it makes you, I mean, for one thing, I think that there's a labor disparity involved with that, because they don't have the same kind of union power in Japan that they do in Hollywood.
Yeah.
But in addition to that, I think it's like they're not looking for like photorealistic special effects per se. They're not like doing special effects down to the tiniest detail the way that American movies do. I mean, James Cameron spent what, $500 million on Avatar.
Yeah, but
and you don't get the same kind of experience.
No. Well, the Godzilla in this is impressive, and you mentioned the callbacks. It looks like a rubber suit Godzilla. It is a mid-70s design, that face, and it looks fantastic.
It does.
I have seen movies that you could have made this movie 20 times for what they put in a lot of American films, and they don't look that good. Part of it is the suspension of disbelief, but I think you need that, and I think we've kind of drifted too far from trying to get rid of that with like superhero stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think too, and I mentioned before the way that Godzilla is filmed. Godzilla is generally filmed from ground level in this movie. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's basically filmed from the point of view of human characters, which is not something that other Godzilla movies often do, because you always have sort of this God's eye view of anything where he's fighting a monster, anything where you're seeing him rampage through a city. But in this one, I mean, you're seeing your view constrained by crowds running at you. You're seeing your view constrained by the window that you're looking out of in the train sequence. You're having your view constrained, by the buildings that are in the way, and just the sheer magnitude of Godzilla. And this is why seeing it on a very big screen was really impressive. It put you in the position of the characters looking up at, this cosmic monster. And I think that has an effect that I haven't seen in a Godzilla movie before.
Well, and the train scene's interesting because there's a direct analog to the last American reboot, the first in the current series.
Right.
It's the exact same thing. It's done half as well.
Yeah.
And
I saw a piece of trivia that Gareth Edwards, the director of the first of the MonsterVerse Godzilla movies, apparently saw a viewing of Godzilla Minus One and walked out of the theater weeping because he knew that he had blown it.
Yeah, I mean, just the approach, and it is because of how they frame Godzilla. Because you're right, in the American one, you are at his level, and you're just in his mouth. In the Japanese one, it's still at his mercy.
And that's kind of the reason that this is probably the most terrifying Godzilla movie that I've ever seen. I mean, it's certainly, I think, scarier than Shin Godzilla was.
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on what you get scared by. I mean, for me, it's the monster, but for other people, it's bureaucracy.
Well, that's fair. I'm one of the few people that didn't really like Shin Godzilla. I understand that they were like, yeah, this is how Japan would deal with Godzilla at this point in time. You would have corporate bureaucracy and a whole bunch of meetings. And all I could think was, I'm stuck at a work retreat.
Yeah.
I don't want to be stuck at a work retreat. I want to watch Godzilla wreck stuff.
That's pretty much it. Yeah. And they did the same for Anno did the same with Ultraman. Half that movie is in meetings again.
Oh God,
I don't know why.
I didn't see Kamen Rider. Kamen Rider.
I like that one. It was a bit more goofy. It was a bit more right.
Well, that's good. That's good to hear. Maybe I'll take a look at it. I did see. I mean, after I watched Godzilla Minus One, I took a look at this director's previous film, The War of Archimedes, which is a World War II film. And I was really struck by the difference in the politics between the two movies, because there is a strain of nationalism in The War of Archimedes because it's a World War II period piece, just like Godzilla Minus One is, but it's very militaristic. And this film sort of turns that on its head. It's like anti-militaristic.
Which is another thing that speaks to its credit. It's hard to be anti-militaristic, both us and Japan still, when talking about World War II.
Yeah.
It was refreshing. I think that's part of why it works so well, especially the last act.
Yeah. Because you sort of see a refutation of, an imperial fascist government doing things versus, I mean, not even government, just people coming together to do things in the public good, which is sort of the dawn of democracy, as it were. One of the other things that I liked about this film, I thought that even though I don't know if the science is accurate, it seems more practical. It seems more like it could be a real thing than, say, the oxygen destroyer
Come on.
film. I mean, yeah, okay, we're going to sink Godzilla down to high pressure, and then we're going to bring him up and decompress him. And that actually sounds like a plan.
I don't know if it would work where they did it. I mean, because it's huge. You'd have to go deep.
Yeah.
But,
But it still sounds more plausible.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's not something I ever expect to see in a Godzilla movie, is plausibility.
Yeah, that's a point. I love the boat scenes. Those boats are gorgeous.
Oh yeah.
When Godzilla chases the boat, that is probably the scariest scene I've seen in a movie in years. Like, tense. Again, watching someone else watch it, like, didn't blink. Twice. Once in color and black and white. Whole time just.
Yeah, well, it's terrifying.
It's terrifying, but it's so absorbing, and it is a giant lizard dog after them, but it's still absorbing and terrifying.
Yeah, well, I mean, an ant is harmless until you blow it up into to be the size of a Boeing 747.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean that is, I think, the point where I think my partner turned to me and said, "They're gonna need a bigger boat." But yeah, that's that. I mean, yeah, I mean, I love all of those characters on the boat.
Mhm.
I mean, I love the pacifist captain. I love Mr. Noda, the scientist. I love the kid who is sad that he missed out on being in the war. I mean, I thought that those characters seemed like they came. I mean, they're like caricatures, almost. I mean, they're like finely drawn characters of the kind that you see in like a Miyazaki movie.
Mhm.
Especially Mr. Noda. Mr. Noda, I think, is like taken whole and bleeding from a Miyazaki movie, which I loved. Um, I loved the Next Door Neighbor, but that actress is familiar to me because she's been in a bunch of Corey Ida films. She was in Shoplifters, and she was in Monster, and she was in a bunch of
Oh,
other stuff.
see, I meant to look it up, but yeah, okay.
Yeah, and she's and that whole theme of found family seems like it also comes from a Corey Ida film, because it's like like Shoplifters and Brokers and um oh God, I'm blanking on the other film that I'm thinking of. But anyway, I mean, this thing is like a thieving magpie. It takes from a bunch of different traditions, and I think it all works.
Yeah, it does, and the cast sells it. Because that's one of the captain could come off much worse than he does.
Yeah,
I mean, it takes conviction to deliver those lines, which again, I don't think we'd get in an American film doing the same thing.
no, I mean you can't wink at the audience with this,
Mm-mm.
and they never do.
No, and they play a lot of it really hurt. Like when they leave the kid behind, it's heartbreaking. His anger and upset is palpable.
Yeah, or the scene where the mechanic, Mr. Tachibana, you
Mhm.
know, basically beats the crap out of Shikishima. I mean, that's just, you don't see that in a Godzilla movie.
Mm-mm.
I mean, this is I think about the only Godzilla movie that I can think of where I actually gave a shit about all of the human characters, not just one or two, all of them.
Yeah, no, I, I was thinking about that, especially after seeing it in the black and white version. No, I agree. I think maybe there was a Gamera in the Millennium series where I cared about the people, but I don't think Godzilla's pulled it off before.
Well, those Gamera movies from the '90s are amazing, though.
They're so good.
My ex business partner, who I used to own a video store with, big uh, Godzilla fan, uh, had to struggle to admit that, yeah, I think that the Gamera movies from the '90s are better than any of the Godzilla movies they're making right now.
So good. And they don't get the credit, they don't get the love. They're so good.
They are.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they got enough love that the director of those movies got to make one of the Millennium Godzilla movies.
Yeah.
So, I mean, game recognizes game, I guess.
Yeah. But then they kind of put him on a shelf for, it's been, how long's it been since Brave?
I don't
Camera
know.
the Brave, it's over 20 years now.
It
It's
is.
really close.
Yeah.
I mean, and there's been an animated series, which I don't want to, let's not talk about that.
Right. Well, that's the same as like the Godzilla animated
I don't want to talk about that.
trio of films. Those are bad.
Those are so bad. I watched them all. I was like, okay, I'll give them another try. And then I just hated it. Like by the third one, I was just watching to hate it. I didn't want to get there. I didn't want to get there, but I was there. I was there so fast.
Yeah, that's a sure way to kill your joy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, and going into Godzilla Minus One after that experience must have been like, oh man, I don't want to hate this, right?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I was trepidatious. Like I was really iffy going in, but no, they earned it. They got me back so wholesale, like quick too, really fast. That first attack is so good on the island.
Yeah, it is.
It is when he freezes up with his hand on the trigger. No, then I was in. I was wholly sold. But yeah, walking in, I was ready to mock things. I was writing stuff on my hand for later.
Because you knew you were going to be on this podcast, right?
I did. I knew I'd be mocking it at somebody, but then they won me over.
It is, yeah. I mean, quality is its own defense, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a story about Mehmet the Conqueror, who was the guy that conquered Constantinople in the 1400s, wiped out the Byzantine Empire. The Ottoman Turks burned every building in Constantinople except for the Hagia Sophia. And the reason that they didn't burn it is because Mehmet looked at this building and said, truly, this is the house of God. So beauty is its own defense.
Yeah. And in spades, it works for this one.
Yeah.
Because I mean, kaiju stuff has not had the best run the past 20 years.
No, it hasn't.
I mean, there was the Gamera Millennium series, and there's some good ones in the Godzilla run up, but I mean, the American Godzillas are not. They're not.
I do actually have certain amount of fondness for Godzilla versus Kong.
Yeah, but the two before that, they're kind of scared.
They're terrible. They're absolutely terrible.
Mm-mm.
But Godzilla versus Kong has the best version of Mechagodzilla. That inclusive of the Japanese films.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. No, I think you're right.
And it's not even really Mechagodzilla. It's Ghidorah and another guys, which is, I think, brilliant.
I was happy it wasn't a city. So, That's the second animated one, the Netflix one.
Yeah, I know.
It's just well, yeah, I know but someone else might not.
Fair.
They know. It's just, oh my fuck, why? How does? That's what I don't get. Hundreds of people had to look at that because you got the director and the scriptwriter and all the animators. Nobody went, this is really fucking dumb.
Well, you could say that about a lot of films.
Oh yeah, and I do say it about a lot of films. I mean, I say it all the time.
I saw an interview with I want to say it was John Landis, but I hope it's not John Landis, in which he said, you cannot tell while you're on the set whether what you're making is going to be good or not. Because you can have the best time in the world making something and it can be a huge piece of shit, and you can have an absolutely miserable time making something and it winds up being a masterpiece. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, nobody in Hollywood knows anything.
Yeah, that's true. And
apparently that's true in Tokyo too.
Yeah, well, I'm glad it's not just us then.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine spending months animating a giant city that's just, and it's bad, and you just don't say anything. That's all. I don't
know. Do you think that your niece is going to carry this with her for a while?
Yes. Oh God, yes. She moves on from things quickly. There's a handful of things that she's really onboarded that she brings up from time to time.
Okay.
Godzilla Minus One scenes is one of them from the first one, and after we saw it minus color, it's come up more. And the fact I wouldn't let her watch the lore when she was 4. I don't know why she remembers that, but like she's still angry about that. I don't know why. It just is.
No one holds grudges like kids.
No. Literally had some bullying doesn't care about that from her schoolmates. but she's still pissed I didn't let her watch The Lore at 4. And it's like, oh. Oh man. And the conversation was like,
but you let her watch Godzilla though.
oh yeah. Oh, of course. So like immediately. But
Yeah,
like the conversation will go, remember in Godzilla where he knocked down the breath and it came flying back and it pushed the girl off the screen, and it's like, yeah, that was scary, wasn't it? Yeah, almost as scary as when you didn't let me watch The Lore.
You're never gonna live that down.
I'm never gonna live. Like when she eventually sees it, she'll be like, "What was that?" And I'll be like,
"Yeah, I can only imagine what it's gonna be like when you get around to letting her watch The Thing."
"Oh, that'll be fun." I have a friend who watches The Thing every year, and every year we have the same conversation. She old enough to watch The Thing, and it's like, no, why? Mine saw it when they were 6. And it's like, well, yours are weird. God. He just wants to borrow my projector. So
I see.
The Thing, and you can't watch The Thing yet. Go. She just stuck her face in and said, what movie?
You should warm her up with The Thing from Another World.
You seen that?
Oh, well, there you go.
We have seen that. We have seen that in Attack of the 50-Foot Woman. A bunch of those B-50s movies.
Okay.
She loved the Universal Frankenstein and Bride. So we were kind of working other black and white movies in to see, so she gets used to them.
Sure.
Because I know a lot of adults who won't watch black and white films.
Those people aren't to be trusted.
Yeah, I agree. So we've done The Thing from Another World, Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, a couple others. The giant ant one, which I just them. She loved them.
That was really good.
Them is excellent.
I don't remember The War of the Worlds.
We tried that. That just did not hold her attention.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's random, and I never know what it's going to be. So it is a crapshoot.
So Monster's good.
Yeah, Monster's good. Monster's good. Flying Saucers a bit iffier.
That's fair.
If it's large and crushes things, she's down. Okay.
She can be on camera.
Kira, you want to come say hi? Killa? Come here. Say hi.
Hello.
We were talking about you and Godzilla.
What's your t-shirt?
Be shy. What's the t-shirt say?
This girl leveled up.
That's awesome.
She wants to be a game modder. So.
That's awesome.
It's so hard to find girl gaming shirts.
It's hard to find girl gaming shirts. That's true.
That is true. It's hard to find a lot of things for girls.
It is, which is ridiculous. But I've become like I've always liked to think that I'm supportive of people, but the last 8 years I've become very staunchly aware of these things and very angry at it. So, yay!
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I like about this new Godzilla movie is that it does have good roles for women in it.
Which is another thing you don't see in a lot of the Godzilla movies.
No, you don't. I mean, you occasionally see psychic girls in Gamera.
Yeah. the one in the Millennium series is related to Steven Seagal.
I knew that.
Yeah. Which is just one of those things. I know where the talent came from in that family, not Steven.
No, not at all.
Mm-mm. But yeah, there's two really strong female characters in this one, which is it's fantastic. The neighbor is just heartbreaking in some of her scenes, especially her introduction.
Yeah.
Oh, See you, kid.
Bye, Killa. Yeah, but yeah, her introduction is amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, just the bitterness in her voice and just the horror of everything that's around is almost worse than what he went through on the island.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everything is burned, and you didn't even need Godzilla for it.
Yeah, and then you've got his guilt, which again they act out fantastically on coming back when those who should have been safe weren't.
Yeah.
Again, this is something I never expected to see in a Godzilla film, and they play it beautifully. I don't understand people clamoring for a sequel to this. I mean, I'll watch it. I'll be like, yes, please. But it's one of those things where like whatever comes next, I think needs to be new.
Yeah.
Because you can't.
I mean, it's a little bit like the situation that the original Godzilla was in. Yeah, they made a sequel, and yeah, they brought Takeshi Shimura back for that, but they shouldn't have.
Yeah, I mean, something I said on Aaron's podcast is a lot of times Godzilla is more like an actor himself. They stick him in different situations and they act out the role. It's a monster or the hero, but it doesn't work in this one. You can't move on from this to King of All Monsters.
No.
I don't get why anybody would want to either, though.
I mean, the only conceivable reason to make a sequel to this movie is, to make bank on it. Because this movie is very successful, even without being released in most of Asia. So,
it's the only Oscar race I'm interested in too. At this point,
that's fair. I mean, this is a weird Oscar race because I don't have any real objection to any of the nominees in any of the major categories.
Well, yeah, no. I mean, male supporting actors, I think the kid from Anatomy of a Fall deserves something.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, but besides that,
yeah, I mean the only one that I think I'm upset about the omission from is probably Penelope Cruz from Ferrari.
See, I haven't seen Ferrari yet, but
she's
such
so
a
good.
Yeah, it's such a strong category that it's.
Yeah, I mean, what are you gonna do?
Yeah,
I mean, this whole business of Greta Gerwig and Margot Robbie being snubbed in their respective categories is foolish because they're nominated in a couple of other categories. The Oscars are renowned for being parsimonious.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, they've got their nominations. It's just not for Best Actress or Best Director. And I mean, are you going to kick Justine Triet out of Best Director for?
I don't know.
Barbie.
Yeah, it's hard. I think the problem is it's dominated, absolutely dominated, and it's not really fair because there's a lot of amazing work, and I think a lot of it got overlooked last year because everybody was so focused on just the box office is weak, except for Barbie and Oppenheimer and Super Mario Brothers.
Yeah. And that's actually not true. There were a lot of mid-major or mid-sized films last year that actually did really well. It's just that they didn't do $1 billion like they'd gotten used to with an Avengers movie every 2 or 3 years. I mean, I remember there was a couple of years ago that Universal was between franchise films. They were between Jurassic Park films and whatever else their other big franchises. And so they just, released a bunch of mid-budget, mid-sized movies, and they wound up being more profitable than any of the other studios that year just because they had more product that was successful in a modest way than, having this one big hit and then this one big flop.
Mm-hmm.
Or whatever happened to Disney last year, which is, I think, like 3 big flops. And
a lot of big flops. They had a lot of big flops.
They did, yeah.
They did bad.
But I mean, last year you look at things like I don't know, much as I hate to say it, Scream 6 or Talk to Me or there were a bunch of small hits that
Yeah, yeah,
maybe they didn't make $200 million, maybe they were in the $150 million range or even less, but they also didn't have the budget that was gonna cripple their return on investment.
well, it comes back to what I said earlier. Not just is literacy dead, but just expectations.
That
Like
too, yeah.
everything is expected to make $1 billion, and
You can't run studios like that because I mean, if you do that, you're putting all your eggs in one basket, and if that basket tumbles down onto the ground like it did for Disney this year,
well, I mean, what
you're in
is it?
trouble.
Folks think Warner's trying to force a government bailout because they're in bad shape.
Well, that's all self-inflicted, though.
Oh, it's totally all self-inflicted, and it has been for years. It's been
Yeah.
coming, but I mean, they did well with some things, but they lost hundreds of millions of dollars on The Flash and Aquaman, and
Yeah, and those are the ones they chose to release.
yeah, which is I have thoughts, but whatever.
The
They're all
Flash was
delightful.
Did you see The Flash?
I sort of.
Sort of.
I started it, and now I can tie it into Godzilla really easy now. You could make Godzilla -1 20 times for what they paid. And those effects were the most eyesore things I have ever seen. Like, my eyes bled. I was sitting on my couch, just like in a red mist covered everything at the hospital scene. I was like, I don't know what's going on. Just bloody tears at how ugly it was and how,
I had the same problem with Aquaman when I saw it a couple of weeks ago. It seemed completely undirected to me. It's like they made a bunch of animatics and stuck to the animatics, but didn't think about where they wanted people to look, and they loaded the screen with so much shit that there's no place to look.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I stopped The Flash for
And
that.
nothing seemed real. Nothing. I mean, the entire world was CGI. I had that problem with Jungle Cruise too. The
Yeah.
Rock.
Oh,
Everything
yeah.
in that film was in the Valley of the Uncanny.
Oof. Yeah.
In Godzilla, in spite of having a fraction of the budget of these films, convinced me completely.
Mm-hmm. I mean, even like the boat scene, they blow off half his face. Now that could look and it's still terrifying when it comes back. Like, that could have gone bad.
It
And
could have, yeah.
I think in a big American film, it would have gone bad. But they did it in a way that it just enough. Like, it didn't get too technical. It didn't get too, look at how real and gruesome we are. Because that's
That
why.
would have been off-putting, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah.
I mean, I'm glad that spoiler if you haven't seen the film. I'm very glad that when they actually, fly into Godzilla's mouth with the plane and it does its thing, I mean, it's bloodless.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they've timed it so that it's not blood, but it's like nuclear power instead, and that makes it watchable. I don't think that would be watchable if they had actually done it in sort of a grimdark sort of way.
Well, if they did it in the MonsterVerse, it would end with a rain of blood on the boats.
Well, yeah.
100%. They would do that. Nobody would question it. That's what would happen.
Yeah.
And it would ruin it.
Funny you should mention rain. I don't know that I've seen it commented on anywhere, but when Godzilla is at the end of the Ginza sequence, uses his atomic breath. I mean, after Shikishima has suffered this horrible loss, you get the black rain,
Mm-hmm.
which is like, okay, that's specific.
Yeah. And you saw it in black and white too, right?
I did, yeah.
It is. Oh my God. Like, I'm usually not like, I go, oh, that's a gimmick. Okay. Like, I saw Mad Max. Yeah, that's fine. I saw, The Mist. Yeah, that's fine. Holy shit. Like, this changed it. And
Yeah.
it was, wow. That sequence, especially, just holy shit. Like I want to pretend I can be like more thoughtful for it, but no, that's how it left me.
Yeah.
Watching that with the Black Rain, that's all I had to say, and because it left a mark.
I'd love to schedule this with the Imamura film Black Rain, which I mean is kind of falling into obscurity, unfortunately, because it came out the same year as the American film Black Rain with Michael Douglas, which is terrible, by the way. But yeah, because on the one hand, you have a film that's specifically about Hiroshima and its aftermath, and then you have this film that makes it into a symbol that is at the core of the Japanese experience of the mid-20th century, and it's just it's miraculous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just going to agree because yes, there's nothing.
And the performances in this film are so good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, which is really surprising because I mean I know the guy that plays Shikishima, and I can't pronounce his name. I know him from the Japanese soap opera that he's on.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean he's a pop star basically.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the woman that plays Noriko, she was in I think she was in Shin Kamen Rider, but I haven't seen that.
Yeah, she is. I just don't remember. I saw it, but
yeah,
I saw it.
But there, I mean, this has an amazing cast.
Mm-hmm.
And Mr. Noda is just adorable. I just love him. I love him to death. And my favorite shot in the film is when Godzilla comes back up from the depths, and he realizes that they haven't killed him.
Well, yeah.
Just the dismay on his face is like, that is an amazing performance.
Mm-hmm.
Because you just see it just dawn on him, and I'm like, wow, that's really cool.
Mm. Yeah, agreed. Yeah, it affected, like, the way they play things out affected me much more than a lot of other stuff have. I sat through the ad for the Air Force called Top Gun Maverick and felt nothing.
Yeah.
But when the boats show up, the tugs, because it's the common people saving the day in the end, and not the vets.
Yeah, it's Dunkirk rather than Normandy.
Yeah, and like I felt something there, stifled a little sniffle because obviously they played it well, and again the hope on his face when they see the boat show up.
Yeah, exactly.
It's an incredible performance. It's almost it's almost pantomime, just how expressive he is. And it's done straight, and that's exactly what they needed to do. There's no winking artifice to it.
Have you ever listened to the commentary track on the original Godzilla that's on the Criterion disc?
Yeah.
That guy points out that when Takeshi Shimura was the toast of New York for appearing in Ikiru, the Bosley Crowthers, I think, the film critic at the time, said he's the greatest actor on the planet right now. And then not 2 years later, he's in Godzilla, and the same critic says nobody in this film knows how to act. And I'm like, really? I mean, this is a film where you don't expect acting, and you get it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really good, and it's not showy. It's in service to what's actually on screen, which is amazing. I mean, a lot of times when you have, there are showcases that are specifically for acting, and this is not a showcase for acting, but it gets great acting anyway.
Again, I think that comes down to it's part of the divide, because here you wouldn't get those performances. Nothing close to it. They, the folks there would show up, get their paycheck, ham it as much as possible, mug a little, and go home.
I mean, you already see that in the Godzilla, in the MonsterVerse films. I mean, those things have amazing actors in them.
Mhm.
And, I mean, I remember I think the first one, the Gareth Edwards film. And Juliette Binoche shows up at the beginning of the film, and she's on screen for about 4 minutes.
Mm.
And
Oh,
I
I
was
mean,
like, and all I could think was, you just bought a house, didn't you?
it, it was kind of a Godzilla 4 moment.
Yeah. I mean, you have Juliette Binoche in your fucking movie, and what the hell do you do with her? Nothing.
To be fair, they did nothing with anyone in that movie.
Well, that's fair too.
Yeah, I mean,
That movie would have been better if it had been if the entire thing had been from Elizabeth Olsen's character's point of view, on the ground in San Francisco, when you've got kaiju rampaging around the entire place. Except then it would have been Cloverfield, I guess.
Yeah, but with Godzilla, and that's a plus anyway.
Yeah, that is.
I don't know. I just, with how well this has been, Minus One has done, I'm really hoping that whatever comes in the future from Legendary's Monsterverse, they stop being ashamed of showing the monsters.
Yeah,
because that's the whole problem with King of the Monsters. I don't know what the fuck's going on there. They spent $200 million on a movie where you can't see shit. I'm staring at my screen should not be black for 2 hours. I should know what the fuck is going on. But okay.
I'm gonna comment on that, because most of the time they don't know what the hell they're doing with everything that's on screen, but occasionally they pause for a splash page.
Yeah.
Like when Rodan comes out of the top of the mountain, it just, the camera, I mean, the editing just sort of stops for a second, and you sort of see this silhouette, and it's designed to look badass. And I'm like, this is another one of those cases where everything is awesome, but nothing is good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a minor miracle that I went to see Minus One in the theater after how they've treated us. I'm just saying. That ad was just so good, though. It got me hooked.
It was. I saw that ad, I don't know, about 6 months before it came out. And I immediately messaged my partner with a link to this, and I said, this is what I want for my birthday. Because it came out like a week before my birthday, and I'm like, this is what I want, and I don't care if I have to drive 125 miles to see it.
I saw it before, and I cannot even remember. I don't even remember what the other movie was. Like, I don't remember that. I remember seeing the trailer. I don't remember what I sat and spent 2 hours watching afterwards. Like,
yeah,
it's just
I don't remember what I saw, because I saw it a couple of times, so I saw it a couple of movies. But it's just, I mean, I looked at that and I sent it to her, and I said, never mind that Shin Godzilla shit. This is what I want. I'm probably going to get a lot of hate mail from people that love Shin Godzilla, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's fine. No, they're wrong, but that's fine.
They are wrong, but that's fine.
My niece discovered that there's the Godzilla Hotel. So now,
yeah, and you can zip line into Godzilla's mouth.
That's what she saw. And I know where I'm going in a couple years. It'll take me a while. She found that out, and she looked at me and she went, asked me how to Google flights. I was like, no, not yet. I need time. We need to save.
Yeah, I'm not in that room, so I can't show you. I can't turn the camera towards it. But I have a shrine to cinema, and there are two things in that shrine to cinema. One is a framed photograph of a naked Louise Brooks, and the other one is Godzilla. It's one of the Godzilla action figures that's about yay tall. And they're like right next to each other, and that to me is cinema.
I mean, yeah, that's a good argument, to be totally honest. That should be like any college course in film.
It should be.
Yeah. Maybe go into one or two other people at the end, but mostly, yeah.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I'm probably. A friend of mine took an intro to film class a couple of years ago, and she sent me the syllabus and she with the tag, "This is bullshit." Because I mean, it was the standard, canon of cinema, but there wasn't anything directed by a woman or even about women.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm not surprised.
at that point, I was like, I think I'm gonna make my own canon, and we're just gonna like do this as like an intro to film. And that syllabus started with Griffith, which is bad. My
Yeah.
syllabus started with Alice Guy.
Okay. Yeah. No, that makes sense.
So, Alice Guy, Mabel Normand, Dorothy Arzner, Ida Lupino, Agnes Varda. None of these
No,
people were on that list, so that's just dumb.
I'm thinking. I did film classes in college, and yeah, no, it was maybe my third year we did an Ida Lupino film, but it was long. Like it, I think that was probably the only female directed film we covered.
I mean, in their defense, if they're just focusing on American film, at the time, Ida Lupino was the only female member of the Directors Guild.
No, it was international because I had
that's fair then.
I had at least 3 instructors obsessed with Kurosawa's, all of them.
Well, I mean, that's fair.
That is fair. I'm not saying it's not fair, but there were others besides just. But like I've seen every Griffith film twice, and I didn't need that in my life.
No, you don't.
No, you don't even need to see Birth of a Nation.
You don't. All of the stuff that's attributed to Birth of a Nation can be found in other films before Griffith. The reason that you think that they came from Griffith is because Griffith told you so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What is it?
It's the same with Walt Disney.
Yeah.
Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is not the first feature-length animated film. It's not even the third. It's not even the first one that Disney made.
It's just one of those things where there's a lot of changes that need to be made to how we, and it's not just film, it's literature too.
Oh, well, that thankfully is sort of happening.
It is happening. Yeah.
I mean, film costs so much money that it's always going to be the province of rich white men. But even 20 years ago when I was going to film classes, half of the students in my program were women. Sure.
But I think one of them still does anything connected to it, and she's an editor at a trailer house in Tennessee, I think.
Ugh.
But there were 20 when I started. I mean, and that's in a small program in Maryland. There should be more.
There should be.
I mean,
I mean, there needs to be, an incubation process for that. But
I mean, look at how we treat female directors. Another film I loved last year was Polite Society by I think she's English, English Pakistani director.
Sure.
And it's a blast. It is one of the most fun things I've seen in the theater.
It was a fun film.
Yeah, you had to beg people to even get them to talk about it. Like no,
let alone see it.
Yeah. Or look at how they threw Nia Costas under the bus for Marvels for doing average director stuff, going to work on something else before release.
That happens.
Yeah, all the fucking time.
I mean, Oppenheimer was in production before Tenet wrapped.
Mm-hmm. Scorsese's doing a movie about I think of the life of Christ again. I don't know why he'd go back there after, but whatever. But they started that before Killers of the Flower Moon was done editing.
Yeah, I mean, and you have to do that.
Cares.
You have to do that because I mean, anybody that's going to take Nia Costa to task for that has no idea about how movies are made and how big the lead time is.
No, but these are the same people who are then saying,
Godzilla Minus One has a happy ending, therefore it's invalid.
that's exactly, yeah. I mean,
I'm glad we brought this back to Godzilla.
Yeah, well, and these people dominate our cultural film discussion now. YouTube has just fucked us.
Yeah, well, this is going on YouTube, so
Well,
Viva
not
la
all of
Revolution.
YouTube.
Viva la Revolution.
Not all of YouTube. I mean, you can listen to Krell Laboratories and Horror 101 with Dr. AC for pointed, thoughtful analysis, but
I don't know how pointed and thoughtful this one was.
Well, I'm here. It's not going to be pointed and thoughtful. It's going to be rambling and weird.
Right, exactly.
That's my charm.
But I really enjoyed this film, and I hope people go see it. And I hope that it endures as much as I hope that anything endures.
I mean,
you can't. It's going to.
Yeah, it's Godzilla.
I have a story about this. I remember having an argument with somebody, I don't know, about 20 years ago, who was saying that the classics of that time were shit like Rush Hour because it's what made money in the theaters. And I said, look, dude, financial success is not what's going to keep something alive in the culture. Do you know what the highest grossing comedy film of all time is, even adjusted for inflation? Take a guess.
It probably stars Adam Sandler.
It does not.
Oh, okay. Then
it's Porky's. So there's your commercial success argument right there.
I did not expect that. Wow.
So, and on that note, we should probably stop.
Yeah, that's a good place to stop.